There is a peculiar suffering that has become the defining emotional experience of the connected age, the sense that someone else is living the life you should be living. That their career, their relationship, their body, their purpose, the visible surface of their existence as it appears in photographs and announcements and casual mentions, is evidence that you have somehow gotten yours wrong. Viktor Frankl would call this an error. Not just a painful feeling, not just a cognitive distortion to be managed, a philosophical error. And he would explain why with a precision that the standard self-help response to envy rarely achieves. At the center of Frankl's logotherapy is a principle that sounds simple but has profound consequences. Meaning is always unique. It is not a category you can share with someone else. It is not a status you can compare to another person's status. It is irreducibly particular, specific to this person, this situation, this unrepeatable configuration of capacity and circumstance and historical moment. He put it directly: no one can replace each other, and no person's life can be repeated. Every human being is singular. Every life is a once-occurring question, asked only once, and the answer to it, the lived response that constitutes a meaningful existence, cannot be derived from looking at anyone else's answer. What this means for envy is precise and devastating. Envy is a category error. When you look at someone else's life and feel the corrosive sense that theirs is the kind of life that should be yours, you are implicitly believing something that Frankl's entire system denies. You are believing that their meaning could be your meaning. That their path could, with different circumstances, have been your path. That what fulfills them is at least a candidate for fulfilling you. But it isn't. Not because their life is not genuinely good, it may be, but because meaning is not a universal currency. It does not transfer. The specific call that life is making to this other person is not the call it is making to you. Their answer to their question is not an option for your question, because you are being asked something different. This does not make envy disappear. The feeling is real and the suffering it produces is real. But understanding what the feeling is actually pointing to, not toward a deficiency in your circumstances, but toward an unanswered question about your own unique meaning, changes the productive response. Instead of asking, how do I get what they have? The useful question becomes, what is actually being asked of me? Frankl also noticed that social comparison has a tendency to fixate on the most visible and least important dimensions of a life. What is easily photographed and shared, achievement, appearance, social proof, the markers of conventional success, is often precisely what is least related to genuine meaning. The most meaningful elements of most people's lives are invisible in their social presentation, the quality of their attention to the people they love, the private courage of their difficult choices, the interior life that produces external results but is itself unphotographable. The comparison engine therefore tends to produce a particularly distorted form of envy, one that is calibrated to the least meaningful features of the lives it is comparing. You are measuring your interior against their exterior, which is never a fair comparison and never a useful one. In the era of social media, Frankl's insight applies with an urgency he could not have anticipated. The platforms that have been built around social comparison are, from a logotherapeutic perspective, existential vacuum machines. They optimize for engagement, and nothing generates engagement quite like the feeling that your life compares unfavorably to someone else's. The scroll is designed to produce exactly the discomfort it fails to resolve. The exit from this is not the cultivation of gratitude for what you have, though that is not a bad practice. The exit is the development of a sufficiently clear sense of your own unique call that the question of whether someone else is answering a different call stops feeling relevant. When you know what you are here to do, not in a grandiose sense, but in the specific, concrete sense of what this day is asking of you, the comparison loses its grip. Envy is, in the end, evidence of an unanswered question. The answer to it is not found by looking outward. Subscribe to the Psychology of Viktor Frankl to explore more of his timeless ideas.